right, guys. So today's pod is gonna be in English, or we do it in Spanish.
English
It's a
is
little
preferred.
bit okay. So with us today, I have a very special guest. A guest that probably he doesn't know, but he has bring me a lot of money. I think.
I hope so.
Not in any bad way, but as an investor, I have several properties in Weston, and I always tell people why I prefer to buy in Weston and why I love Weston so much that I've been living here for more than 16 years, and where I have chosen that city as the city for my kid, for my son and my daughter. They have grown in Weston. They have their family. Their friends here in the city, and it's a city that I hold very dear to my heart. Mr. Don Decker, the city manager of the city of Weston. How are you, Don?
I'm great, and I appreciate hearing that. It makes us feel good to know that residents feel that way about their community.
Yeah, well, I was reading actually, and I want to read it to you, and I think they're wrong, but I'll read it. According to U.S. News and World Report, number 3 to live in Florida, number 74 to live in United States, and top 10 safest cities to live in the U.S. And I think they're hitting us. I think we should be number 1 in Florida. We should be number 5, top 5 in the nation, and safest, I would say top 5 also. But they can be wrong. That's okay.
No, absolutely.
What do you think the city has done so right? Because I think you guys are a role model for a lot of the cities around the country. And the impact of the administration, of the commissioners, of the mayor, time over time, has created the city to be so stable and so consistent through the years that we always appear in these numbers.
Well, I think a few key decisions early in the city's history still benefit us today. The first is, as a master plan community, when Arvida built the majority of Weston, they planned very meticulously on the design of the city, where the commercial sectors would be, where the housing would be, the street network, the schools, and that meticulous planning today still benefits us because it was laid out in such a organized fashion. You go to some of the older communities and you drive through a neighborhood and boom, there's a convenience store right in the middle of the neighborhood, and how did that happen? It's because they didn't have the benefit of the planning that was done as a master plan community. They knew in the 80s where all the homes were going to be built, where all the schools would be built, and they stuck to that plan. And then flash forward a little later, when the city incorporated, the residents who talked about the future of the city of Weston said, how can we operate this city that was built so well in the most efficient way possible? And they determined at that time, through the city's charter, that we would be this model contract city where we would not hire a lot of employees, but we would rely on professional firms and organizations like BSO to contract with to provide those services. So that really benefited us then and now and in the future, because we don't have some of the long-term obstacles that other cities have in terms of funding long-term pension obligations for thousands of employees. We don't have that. We have 12 city employees, and then we contract out all this other work to private businesses for the most part, whose jobs as a private business to operate in the most efficient way possible so they can make money. That's not how traditional government operates. Traditional government is usually not trying to operate with profit in mind. Therefore, excess spending, wasted spending can sort of bubble up. Those two decisions set the course for our success even today. I rely very much on those decisions to allow us to be as successful as we are today, because we haven't broken away from either one of those core values that we had. A well-planned community and a well-run community. If we continue that going forward, that's how we continue to realize success.
It's impressive because the city budget for the city, it's $250 million between one thing and the other. Yet, the city doesn't have many employees, right? And it's so well organized. How did that happen?
Well, it is a nice thing to put on a header that we only have 12 employees, but the reality is, on a day-to-day basis, we've got 350 dedicated people out there that are working on behalf of the city. Now, their paycheck might not say City of Weston, but they are 40 hours a week dedicated to the success of the City of Weston. So that incorporates all of BSO, police, and fire. They all work for the Broward Sheriff's Organization, which is a county entity. But if you ask the individual police officers or the individual firefighters who they work for, a lot of them will say, I work for Weston, because they're dedicated to making sure that Weston is safe and secure. And that happens through all of the different types of services the city provides. Parks and recreation, lots of contract cities, but they're trying to uphold the Weston standard. They're not upholding a standard from another community. They're trying to meet the Weston standard. So that it doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen without a lot of expense. But the values a community community have is pretty much built on the budget that it sets for itself. And the city of Weston has determined we want to have this level of service, which requires this much expense to make happen. And in our past, when there's been times when there's been conversations about whether or not we were to cut the budget, the city commissions have been very steadfast that no, we don't want to cut the value of what we're providing. Therefore, we can't cut the budget. And that led us through the recession times. You know, we didn't cut a lot during the recession because the commission said, no, if we're going to start acting like a depressed community, we're going to start looking like a depressed community, and that's not acceptable to the Weston residents.
And funny enough, I remember in the Great Recession, financial crisis, all the country was impacted, right? All the country, but I think Weston wasn't one of the cities that was least impacted, right? The impact in Weston felt very small.
I think we had the lowest property value reduction of any city in the nation, and I don't think that was by accident. I think it's because the then elected officials, I believe Eric Hirsch was the mayor at the time, said we're not going to sacrifice who we are as a community. We're going to find a way to make it work, and we did, and it did help temper the negative. I mean, everybody suffered during the recession, but Weston suffered less than most.
Yeah. Again, as an investor, right, which is what we hope we have here as followers, that's one of the key things that I look when I'm going to invest. How are the cities being managed? How are the city investing the taxes that the homeowners are paying, right? And it's amazing in Weston. I remember in 2007 or 8 when I came into Weston through Royal Palm, maybe 30 seconds after I was driving into Royal Palms, I was like, this is the city I want to live in. And I think everybody that comes to Weston and comes in through that entrance of Royal Palm, they have the same feeling because, the landscaping job, it's amazing. I don't know who controls that.
His name is Thad Bilecki. He's our director of landscaping, and he is phenomenal, but he has
we got to bring him in because he's like an artist.
Yeah.
And everybody that comes here to Weston, family, friends, they're impressed. They're like, how can you guys maintain? How much money are we spending? Obviously people go to that. And yet the city still has one of the lowest millage rate, and it hasn't moved in years, I think in 8 years. Yeah. So taxes obviously have gone up because property values have gone up,
right.
But the city's not charging a higher percentage. It's charging the same thing as it was charging a lot of years ago, right?
Yeah, the property values certainly help us to keep that millage rate down. A couple other factors played into that because when we set the millage rate in 8 years ago now, we had told the commission then we will try to make 3 years out of this millage rate and maybe a fourth, but after the fourth year, we're probably going to have to raise it because costs only go up, for residents
Correct.
and for cities. Our costs only go up. But COVID certainly slowed spending, so that helped to some degree. Property values are going up higher, which helped to some degree. And, the city staff is very good about monitoring expenses. We it's not that we don't spend money, but we try to spend money in a fiscally responsible way so that we are being good citizens of good keepers of the citizens' dollar. You mentioned a little bit about, that awe and it helping an investor to decide to come to Weston. If you look at our organizational chart, our city structure, we say the residents come first, but we really call them shareholders because we really believe that when you buy into Weston, you're buying an investment that you hope at someday is going to pay off for you. That mantra of working for the shareholders and operating more like a business than a traditional government, I think is what the thread that keeps Weston operating as well as it does through all the years, even through changes in leadership.
Through your time in West, well, first off, how long have you been within the city? I know you've held different positions, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I was hired in 2001, so this will be my 25th anniversary with the city this year. I first was hired in parks, just as we opened up the Weston Regional Park. I was hired to help run the community center there and the park system. And then when the first city manager, John Flint, retired in 2019, I was selected by the city commission to be city manager. So 25 years, seen a lot of the growth that's happened in Weston, but I didn't move to Weston to take the job. When I came to South Florida and we sat down with a realtor, we asked the realtor, they asked us, what are you looking for in a city? And we said, well, we would like to have good schools because we're going to have children someday, and we're probably not going to be able to afford private schools, so we want to get in the best schools. We want to be in a safe neighborhood because, if we're going to raise a family, we want it to be safe. And we said, parks are going to be very important to us because we were really outdoorsy. The realtor said to us, the only place we're going to take you is Weston. And we said, well, we'd like to see something else. He said, you're only going to like Weston. So we looked at some places.
And you already knew that was going to be your job?
No, I didn't know I was going to work for Weston at the time.
Okay.
I came down here actually to work for the city of Plantation.
Okay.
And we were just looking for a home. But when the realtor showed us other communities and they showed us Weston, I saw the same thing you did. I was like, I can't live anywhere else. My wife agreed. We bought something small at the time because we could barely afford what we bought in Weston. But it was the best decision that we made because we raised our family here. Now our kids were born, raised, and off to college now. And everything that we expected, good schools, safe environment, great parks. It just so happens that long after, several years after I moved to Weston, I got the job in Weston as well. So yeah, it's been a nice full circle for me.
It's again, as Western resident, you and me. I mean, I very few things I say that I really like, and I even get to say I love it. But I love living in Weston. We're empty nesters now, and it's very hard for me. You know, you always say, well, I'm gonna downsize and I'm gonna move to the, closer to the beach or whatever. I'm like, no, that's not gonna work. I love it here.
And I think when you talk about why we don't see a lot of turnover in homes, I think that happens. I think the expectations is the empty nesters will move, but we're finding that a lot of empty nesters are staying, and actually they're looking for maybe a downsized home, but they still want to stay in Weston, which is what's driving some of the other kind of proposed projects that are out there.
That was the other number that I have here. In 2010, our population was about 65,000 people. 2026, it's only 68. So in population, we haven't grown, which usually for a city, also it's not a positive thing, right? But yet in Weston, it has been, I think it's positive because we have seen the city upgrade their services, continue with the quality of landscaping services, BSO, fire marshal. I mean, and the city keeps operating at a high level, right? And that's very unconventional to government.
Exactly. I tell the staff often, one of our biggest challenges is that the people who move to Weston today want to have the same wow factor that you had when you moved in 2010 and when I moved in 1998. So how do you make a community that's 25 years old look like it's 1 year old or 5 year old? So we spend a lot of money, some of it our own money and some of it the surtax dollars that we get from Broward County, to make sure that our infrastructure, our streets and our landscaping and our lighting systems and everything is in good repair and looks, if not brand new, looks pretty good, because that's the standard that we set 25 years ago, and that's the standard we're going to have in 25 years from now. So reinvesting, just like your home, if you live in a home that hasn't had a kitchen remodeled in 30 years, my guess is you don't have a happy wife, because most people expect they're going to have to redo the kitchen, they're going to have to redo the living room, they're going to have to put a new roof on the house. The cities have to do the same thing. If the regional park today looked like it did in 2001, people wouldn't enjoy the regional park because it would have aged and not had that reinvestment that keeps the value up. We have to do the same thing with the city and with the infrastructure.
And back to the main point, which is property values, right? As a homeowner, like you said, as an investor, right? When I see that on the city, I feel like it's putting money on my pockets, because every time the city invests on a court, on a park, on something, my property values, at least it doesn't lose any value. And in many cases, or in the best cases, like here in Weston, your property value is going to go up. So that's equity that we're building in our properties, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's important, wherever you're going to buy, first time home buyer or for investment, whatever, look at the government of the city, right? And that's where it's remarkable what you guys done. And again, I know that there's a few cities that have knocked on your doors to give them briefings and give them how you guys do it, right? Yeah. I heard, is that
we have, especially in the early years, because the contract city form of government was a little unique, and now more cities are doing that. But when they come today, they ask us, somebody was here a couple weeks ago asking us how we keep our parks maintained so well. It's because we set a standard. We want our parks to be this standard, and then we hold the vendor who's responsible for maintaining the park accountable for that standard. And then if they don't perform well, we penalize them for that. I mean, that just like you would, if you had a pool company taking care of your pool and they did the work, and then when you got home it wasn't clean, you wouldn't want to pay the company, right? Correct. Same thing with our vendors to provide all the services. If they're not meeting a standard, we're going to look for somebody else to do that job. And that's something you can do a little bit easier when you're a contract city versus if I had all city employees doing all that work, then you've got to go through collective bargaining rules to discipline an employee or get rid of an employee that's not performing well. Though we don't have those challenges in Weston because of our small footprint as a city government.
Yeah. And right now, Don, what are the, I don't want to say problems, but the challenges of the city? What do you see as something that might be an issue on the future, or problems that we're seeing right now? What are the challenges of the day-to-day operation of the city?
The most immediate concern we have, and we don't know if it's going to be a challenge yet or not, but the most immediate concern we have is what is going to be the impact of whatever property tax reform that's being proposed at the state level. As I said earlier, earlier, we can do what we do because of the revenues we have to do it. So if there are significant impacts to revenue, however that comes to be, then the challenge is how do we maintain Weston today if we have a fraction of that revenue because of whatever's decided at Tallahassee. So, not to get political about it, but that's just the reality of it. How does the city react? Our position, and I think I can speak for the elected officials' position, is that the homeroom authority granted to us by the state was set for this very issue. Let the local officials decide how to best run their cities and how best to fund the running of those cities. And in Weston, if we think landscaping is important to us, we should be able to dedicate a certain amount of dollars to that and not have Tallahassee tell us, well, no, you can't dedicate that much money to that. And that's going to be our challenge, is if that gets forced upon us, how does the city of Weston react so that we can maintain the standard that we've been talking about now going forward? We'll see how that plays out. I think the next challenge before us is, as an aging community, we have to start preparing for what Weston will be like 25 years from now. We were master planned in the 90s, the 80s and early 90s, and that master plan got us this far. But going forward, we know that we're 90% of our community is residential, so you're not going to make substantial changes to the residential area of the community. But the commercial areas and some of the longer standing multifamily areas, like in the Bonaventure area, some of those areas, 25 years from now, if they don't see some kind of investment in their own infrastructures, then what happens? And so hopefully those commercial entities or the residential multifamily entities will want to make the improvements themselves. But if they don't, then what? What will the city do as a result? So we need to start thinking about what happens 25 years from now. Does the city want to consider, we don't have mixed use products in the city of Weston, for example, where you have commercial and residential in one area. But that's a trend you're seeing pretty much all over the nation now. Is that something the city wants? Is that something the city doesn't want? If we want it, there'll be an impact. And if we don't want it, there'll be an impact. So those are the kind of things we have to start thinking about going forward. We can't wait for 25 years and less investment, less improvement, and then have to react. We need to be proactive about that.
Yeah, because I think after COVID, one of the most impacted industries has been the call centers or the business parks, right?
Absolutely.
Where Ultimate and the health companies used to be. Some of those buildings are empty.
Office space, yeah. Office space
right?
is a big question mark right now. And what's going to happen either with those facilities, will they become something else? Or if not, can you take down some buildings and rebuild with something different? So I think we're in the early stages of seeing the effect of that and people going and working from home, but we're not quite at the stage where we know exactly what's going to happen. We've seen in the industrial areas some repurposing of warehouse space in Weston, for instance. We had warehouses that became Stryker. We had warehouse that became an indoor family center. So those kind of things are happening, but now we have to see the same thing on the office space. And where the city's role in that is somewhat limited because we're not the property owners.
Maybe on the zoning.
Yeah, on the zoning, we could take a look at zoning and see whether we could provide for a more flexible zoning that would encourage redevelopment, or we could work with developers to talk about, what makes Weston so special that you want to come and locate to our community.
Yeah, those what I have seen in other cities, those places have become mixed use, right? Like you were saying, sometimes residential, some commercial, or even the three of them: residential, commercial, and office. Right. So,
but even I don't even know if we know where the trends are going yet, because as much as we saw people starting to go towards home work, now you're kind of seeing this resurgence of office work again. So I don't know that it's right to make a decision today, not knowing exactly how this is all going to play out. But I know that the commercial property owners are looking at it and trying to figure it out, because ultimately their success rides on some of these decisions.
Yeah, and that was my next question is, you guys, I mean, even though Weston is Weston, you have sister cities, right? Cooper City, Sunrise, Davie, right? Southwest branches. And at the end, even though you can't take decisions for them, how much is the communication between cities? Just to, be on the same page, or do you guys have an open communication of projects that Weston might develop and Sunrise can benefit, or the other way around?
We do talk both. There's a professional organization in Broward for all the city managers where we get together on a quarterly basis. But in terms of what's going on our immediate borders, we have good relationships with all of our neighbors: Sunrise, Davie, Southwest Ranches, a little bit Cooper City. They're not too far away as well. And typically when we talk, it's when we're talking about something that's related right to one of our borders or the other. If there's development going on, impacts. A good example we had is a couple of years back, the Western Road corridor between Indian Trace and 84. We did a project project with Sunrise, we jointly applied for some state funding to improve that corridor and have it repaved. And the residents don't care where the line is between one city and the other. They just want to have a street that's in good repair. So we worked together with them to make that project happen, which in addition to repaving the roadway, created some bike lanes now that weren't there before. So now you can take a bike lane all the way up almost to State Road 84 and Markham Park. So that's one example. Another example is we work with Davey with the impacts of the new hotel that was just built on the south side of Indian Trace to understand how the Indian Trace Road was going to be impacted by that. Our traffic engineers talked to Davey traffic engineers to come up with a solution that would allow for that development to happen and not have negative impacts to the people who are traveling on the roadway, which was in that case Sunrise, Davey, and Weston residents, since we're all kind of meeting right there. So we do talk, and again, the reality is the residents are less concerned about where those borders are than the cities are, and ultimately, what's good for one has to be good for the other as well. But the residents need to understand we don't get to dictate what happens in Sunrise, nor does Sunrise dictate what happens in Weston.
Now you're talking about the bike lanes. Has the bike lanes, bike community, bike traffic, is that an issue that the city, or how does the city go about it? Because, in social media, there's a lot of people
it's a big one.
complaining.
Pickleball, bicycles. There's some
yeah.
hot topics in Weston. I suspect bike lanes and the consternation between the drivers and the cyclists will be a problem in Weston decades from now. I don't think it's a problem that's going to go away. What the city has done is tried to improve where we don't have bike lanes, try to add bike lanes. And from a BSO perspective, we're trying to make sure that everybody is operating in these public spaces in a safe manner. We do have ongoing communications between BSO and the cycling communities that we know exist out there to try to make sure that they are operating with respectful understanding of the laws. And same thing with our, as much as drivers like to complain about the cyclists, there's a lot of bad drivers out there as well. And so, it's easy to say that guy's breaking the law while I'm doing 60 miles an hour down a 45 mile an hour zone or texting on my phone. So our job is to try to make sure everybody is getting along out there. The reality is, for as many cyclists as we have in Weston, we have a very low accident rate. We're very fortunate because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of cyclists in our community every week. And the reality is, we don't want any accidents, but the ones we do have, there's so few that they're not. It's not a significant problem. Partly because we have the bike lanes out there.
That's a discussion I have with my wife. She's like, "Oh, but the cyclists are taking the road. Let them take the road. Relax. You're gonna be 30 seconds late to anywhere you were going.
30 seconds is a long time for some people.
Be happy that we don't have traffic in Weston. Just,
The reality is there are disrespectful cyclists, there are disrespectful drivers, and there are people out there running and walking who are not necessarily being aware of their surroundings. It's easy to point fingers, but I'll be the first to say I've broken some laws in the car, and I've done some dumb things on a bicycle, and I've been one of the runners in the roadway. I've done it all. We all just need to understand we're all living in the same place. Let's have a little patience. I think you put it well. Let's all have patience with each other.
It's all about having patience. I'm like, look, we're gonna be 10 minutes late to church.
Exactly.
God will understand that we're behind the bikers.
Our job, and we try to educate. We try to educate the runners. We try to educate the cyclists. We try to educate the bikers. Are we going to make everybody all like each other? Probably not. Probably not.
What other challenges do you see, like the bikers? Like you were talking about the parks. Was a good thread in Facebook about parks too.
Oh, sure.
People complaining that they were not allowing them to use the park. Yeah. But you told me that they opened the park and they removed the gates.
Well, there's a couple issues I've seen in parks as of late. One of them was a few years back when Indian Trace Park, which is next to Indian Trace Elementary School, I think most of the community didn't even know it was a city-owned park because it was surrounded by a fence. And the reality is the kids would go out there and use that park for recess, but the general public wasn't using it on a regular basis. Not all, but many of the schools and the parks were built next to each other with the idea that there would be joint use of the facilities. Unfortunately, after all of the shooting incidents that were happening on school campuses, all campuses had to become more secure, so they put fences up, and now that joint use wasn't happening anymore. So we're now going back and redesigning the park so that we have our own parking, our own restroom amenities, and then making them more
independent.
Yeah, independent and inviting for the residents to use. But yeah, once we redesigned that park, opened it up for use, there was a little bit of concern with the parents at Indian trace at the time. The reality is I think most people are generally happy with how that happened. And we're doing it right now at Windmill Ranch Park next to Everglades Elementary. We're doing that park. And in the future, we'll probably do Eagle Point Park and Heron Park next to Country Isles and make all these parks more accessible for the community. The other issue here we hear a lot about is the general public gets unhappy when the fields are closed because the teams, the organized leagues, are using them. That's like the cycling and car issue. It will never be resolved. But the reality is the goal of the city is to find balance between the leagues that are using them, who are their residents as well, and there's non-residents too, but there are a lot of residents using them, and you and me that want to go out there with our kids and just throw the ball. We try to strike that balance. So we're making improvements in the parks. We're adding facilities, adding artificial turf so that we can use the fields all the time and not just limit them so they don't have wear and tear. We're trying to manage that the best we can. But the Sports Alliance, which runs our leagues, has a lot of value to the city in being the ones who are helping to determine the field use, when it's available, when it's not available. And we're trying to engage the public to be a part of that process as well.
And in infrastructure, I know that the city is always trying to, improve the courts, improve the fields and everything. What are the projects that are coming within the next, 36 months of improvement, infrastructure?
Sure.
What do we have on the...
Well, as we speak, work is being done at Gator Run Park to add some more parking and to add some hard courts for both pickleball and basketball and improve that park. It hadn't been touched in a number of years. We're also doing Windmill Ranch Park, as I have mentioned, which will have Bermuda grass field. We'll have basketball courts. I think it's called, there's a name for the court. I can't remember. A type of basketball and a new playground, shelter, and some parking there as well. Larger projects, we're doing artificial turf. Actually, the first fields we put in at both Regional Park and at Sequester Trace Park are now at the end of their useful life. So we're going to redo the turf that we did initially. Yeah, they only last about 8 years. And then you have to put in...
Oh my God.
Sequester Trace was done 8 years ago now.
I'm getting
yeah, me too. I put that turf in. And then the big project we have that's on the horizon that's in the planning stages right now is Vista Park Phase 2, which is set to incorporate a new recreation center that will have indoor and outdoor basketball courts, meeting rooms, and party rooms and so forth. And then outside will be a splash pad, a playground, and additional parking on the vacant lot that people see right next to Cypress Bay. That Phase 2 was supposed to be built, I think, in 2006. And then 2007, we hit the recession. We didn't do that project. Now we're coming around and trying to get that done now. So that'll be a significant project. All in, the building's about $30 million. The total project is going to be closer to 50. And then we're doing a small project at Regional Park where we're moving the maintenance building and putting in some more pickleball courts there as well. So
there was a project for Regional too, right?
There was going to be at one time a number of years ago we were talking about expanding the existing community center or building a new community center there. When COVID hit, the commission at that time decided not to go forward with that building because there was a lot of uncertainty what was going to happen during COVID with everybody's finances. So this commission has determined after we did a Parks and Recreation master plan where we encouraged the community to get involved in the planning aspect of it, they've determined we're going to build this recreation center now at Vista Park, and anything we do at Regional Park will probably be 8-10 years in the future, and we'll revisit that.
All right. And you've been there for 25 years.
25 years.
I have two questions. How have you seen there's no growth on the population. There have been changes of the population because of so many people coming from different areas of the world, I think.
Absolutely.
How have you seen that change gone through those 25 years that you have been here?
Well, definitely we've become much more diverse than when I first got here. Although that was happening as I got here, because the reality is 1992, Hurricane Andrew, which destroyed a lot of the southern portion of South Florida, drove a lot of people to new housing that was being built in Weston. And a lot of those people were foreign-born folks, whether it was from Venezuela, Ecuador, Colombia, the islands for that matter. So our diversity started to change soon thereafter. And then it has just kind of been multiplying. I have found, and I'm not from one of those foreign countries, but it seems to us that once people start establishing roots from outside the area, then others from outside that area are looking for those same neighborhoods. So we saw an explosion of the Venezuelan population, Colombian population, because a few families moved, and then a few more families moved, and a few more families moved. I would tell you the diversity of the community is one of the things that I most value in Weston, because for my children, I went to a predominantly white Christian high school. In fact, there was no diversity at the school I went to. And so then when I got to college, it was little bit of a culture shock to me because that's not what I grew up with, and it was just something new to me. My children grew up in maybe one of the most diverse high schools in all of the nation. So as they're going on in life, that diversity is just something that they grew up with, and I think that is fantastic.
The other one I want to ask you, you have seen how many different commissioners and mayors through 25 years, what,
Yeah.
probably
4 mayors and dozen or more elected officials. Yeah.
how is the interaction with the elected officials and the staff? How do you guys, because I see there's a lot of harmony. Obviously there's always politics involved, but yet the city, it seems not to bother the city. The functionality of the city is still the same.
Yeah. Well, that's a testament to the elected officials for the most part, because I think when they get into those roles, it's been my experience that all the elected officials I've encountered want to learn and understand better how we operate, and or they got into the role because they appreciated how we operate and they don't want to mess it up. Just as I'm a new city manager, I've only been in the job, 6 years now, but my biggest job was, okay, make sure I don't screw it up what the last guy did, because he did such a great job. I don't want to mess up the apple cart, So the elected officials have been completely supportive because they've seen the success that we've been talking about, and they want to continue that success. Part of the thing we do in Weston is the staff doesn't get involved in the politics. It doesn't matter to me who's elected. It matters. I hope that we'll have a good relationship, but I don't care if they're Republican. I don't care if they're Democrat. I don't care if they're independent. Frankly, none of those things matter to a local government official. A Republican or a Democrat, all you want is your trash taken out. You want the good parks. You want streets that don't have potholes. So that shouldn't matter. But to the extent that it does matter to them, the city staff, we just stay out of that. And our job there is to support all of them, no matter which side of the aisle they come from, because their success, no matter if they're Republican or Democrat or independent, means the city's success.
Right now you have, as a mayor, Peggy, which I respect her a lot and I appreciate her a lot. And then you have Fabio, Mary, and
Henry and Byron.
Henry and Byron.
Yeah.
I mean, they're great people, all of them, right?
Absolutely.
How's the relationship the last season of
Very good. Commissioner Andrade got elected last year, but I've known the commissioner since I started in Weston. Probably one of the first residents I met when I got there. I knew his children when they were very little. Commissioner Mead, when he became elected official, he actually went through a process of having been sort of a community activist. I started working with him when I was the parks director because he came to the city interested in what we were doing at Peace Mountain Park at the time, because his neighborhood was right next to that park, and he started engaging with us to understand the impacts he was going to have the community. That kind of got him involved in the city, and then he decided to run for office. All of our elected officials that I've worked with have had a long history in Weston, and so they've, just like you and I, they've seen the good that has been done, and so they're coming into the position understanding that success and valuing it and wanting to make sure that they sustain it. That all of them have come in saying, I want Weston to continue to be number one for security, number one for investment, number one for the most beautiful place to live, and they've all been continuing to support that. So it's been fantastic. Mayor Brown is not, I don't even think she's in town right now. She's up in Tallahassee right now, not only advocating for the city of Weston, but also for all the cities in the state, because she's taken a role as the president of the Florida League of Mayors. So she is the mayor that was elected amongst all the other mayors to be the voice for that organization.
That's another testament to the city too.
Oh, absolutely. It's a testament to her specifically, but it's a testament to, I think her, the people that have come to respect her have done so because they've come to respect what she has done as the mayor in Weston. And they've said, that success is something to be rewarded in terms of being elected to that position. But it's been fantastic. And all of them have good relationships with other elected officials outside of Weston. I know when Commissioner Jaffe picks up the phone to call a commissioner in Sunrise, they'll take that call. When Fabio or Peggy call the governor's office because they need something, they know they're going to get a response. So we're very fortunate in Weston to have elected officials who have networked with other elected officials at the local, state, and even the federal level.
That's true. And one thing that I actually like is that you guys are pretty active in social media too. If I've seen you jumped into threads about somebody complaining, and you put the specifications of the problem, you're explaining, and that's, people get like, wait, I'm getting a response from a city manager, which is great, because that's the new way of communication, right? At least for us old.
Right. Well, I'm kind of right on that verge. I'm not into WhatsApps and all that stuff, but I've kind of embraced Facebook and Instagram. I think, as the last city manager was leaving and I was coming in, we were seeing this shift from traditional media to social media. It was happening. And for somebody who is older, just like anybody else. It's hard to embrace new things. And so we did sort of change the way we approached the social media when I became city manager. We just got more engaged. Because the reality is, back in the day, if a city manager didn't like the way the traditional media was covering them, they'd write a letter to the editor and they'd address an issue by sending in an op-ed to the Sun Sentinel. Facebook is kind of the same thing. If there's somebody talking about the city and we need to correct the record, I can jump into their social media and answer a question. And I think it's the same. It's just a different tool. Where social media can get troubling for elected officials or for the staff is if we start getting into back and forth debating, arguing with each other. And that's not our role in social media. Our role in social media is to get in there, either correct a mistake
or provide a fact.
And then if people want to debate whether they like our answer or not, go ahead and debate that. But we're not going to get into a lot of back and forth. I want people to have the right information. And unfortunately today in social media, there's so much misinformation out there. And if the contrary point of view is not the contrary point of view, but if the actual fact isn't established, whatever they read is the fact. So our job is to kind of make sure the facts are out there.
I've seen people complaining about something, and I see Commissioner Byron jumped in. Oh, you know what? Let me call Don. Let me call the sheriff. So it's active. Like you get a response almost immediately. This week, somebody was complaining about something very small, right? And somebody said, "Oh, wait, let me call." I don't know. I think it was you.
Probably.
And I was like, it's amazing that like the smallest problems that we have, if that's a problem, that's not a problem.
Weston problems aren't the same as most cities' problems.
And if that problem is resolved within minutes, I gotta be blessed to live in this city, you know?
Well, I pride myself on that, and the staff knows responsiveness is critical to me. And if the tool's available, now it's a little bit of a consternation at home with my wife and the family. They don't want me to be on the phone 24 hours a day. But the reality is I took this job knowing that I was responsible for a city, not just between 9 to 5, but 24 hours a day. And some of the biggest concerns happen in the evening or at nights, people wanting to know police activity, helicopters flying over our houses. And if we don't answer it, then people start dreaming up what might be, and they go to the worst possible solution. And, oh, there's a police officer there because something terrible happened. Oh, no, there's a police officer there because they stopped to write a report. We just have to try to make sure, sometimes those assumptions can lead to much more drastic concerns. I'd rather just nip that in the bud as quickly as possible if I can.
Addressing those issues, there's an issue that I wanted to discuss and I forgot to mention it. So let me address it right now. So addressing another complex issue right now, we're seeing a lot of electric scooters and e-bikes
Yes.
and it seems, I might be wrong, it seems like it's getting a little bit out of control because you see young kids driving at 25, 30 miles per hour because the electric scooters have more power, or it's becoming an issue. I've seen people almost getting into accidents with them. Does the city has any involvement? Is there any issues that the city can discuss about that?
Well, we saw the same thing you saw. I think I think I read a statistic that the explosion of e-bikes is like a 200 or 300% increase year over year. I mean, they just came out of nowhere, and now you're starting to see them everywhere. So it was very much reactionary. Nobody saw it coming, and now we're trying to set rules and policies to address them. The most immediate thing we did is the city commission last year passed an ordinance that prohibits the e-bikes from being ridden on like trails and on sidewalks within our public parks. So kids can get to the park on the e-bike, but once they're there, they're supposed to park it like they would park a car and then go do their thing. They're not supposed to be riding around. They were damaging soccer fields and the artificial turf. And when you're out there exercising, the conflicts that were happening. Now, when it comes out to the right-of-ways, it's a more difficult question because the reality is for people who are riding these things responsibly, it is a valid form of transportation.
Correct.
One of the arguments people has is the traffic around the schools is so bad during drop-off and pickup time. The lines are long. It takes forever to get my kid. Well, if more of the kids are taking bikes, whether it's a regular bicycle or an e-bike, that would help improve the traffic problem. So we need to find a balance. And in this case, I think the state actually is seeing this as a statewide issue. In fact, there's currently some legislation right now that the city commission is going to consider supporting at our meeting on Monday night that is further restricting the use of the fastest e-bikes because there's different levels of bikes. There are like e-bikes that go 12 miles an hour. Then there's these e-motorcycles that go 30 miles an hour or more. And so one thing is educating the parents on what they're buying to make sure that they know what they're getting. They might be buying an e-motorcycle instead of an e-bike and not realize that an e-motorcycle is not supposed to be ridden by a 12-year-old, So, and can't be ridden, an e-motorcycle can't be ridden on a sidewalk. It can only be ridden in the streets on the right-of-ways. So educating the community, both through the city's communication channels and also in the schools. The BSO is doing a pretty good job job of trying to teach kids now at the schools how to ride them properly, but then also supporting the state to make some specific regulations that then the police officers can write tickets for is also a mechanism. But I grew up in the 70s and 80s out in Southern California when the skateboard craze started coming, and everybody was saying, we got to outlaw skateboards, we got to get rid of skateboards. It can't be out. And the reality is, that wasn't the answer back then either. We learned where to ride them, where not to ride them, and we learned to coexist. I think we need to do the same thing with e-bikes. I think banning them altogether isn't the solution, but finding some rules and regulations that make it safe for the pedestrians and the cyclists is where we need to find that balance.
Moving back to the topic of people coming into the city, how much of an effort does the city or how much focus does the city put in on first-time home buyers?
Well, the city doesn't have programs specifically, but we encourage people to avail themselves of the Broward County programs that are out there, and there's certain criteria you have to meet in order to qualify for those types of programs. But on the city's website, there's a lot of information available, and some of that information includes some of the home buying programs as well as some of the home repair assistance programs we have for people who might be low income or veterans. So it's not programs the city administers directly, but the funding that we get through the federal government, the county is managing that on our behalf. So you'll find links to the county websites where you can go find that application information.
I don't know if you know, but there's one specific program, and it's called HPA, which is Housing Purchasing Assistance, through the Broward County government, that gives Weston residents, new first-time home buyers, up to $120,000 to buy their first house. Obviously, they gotta meet all the requirements.
Exactly.
So and that's actually those funds. They finish the funds. They refuel the fund. But right now, Weston is one of the cities that still has funds for that program.
Yeah. Another thing people need to do, I'm glad you brought this up, is while they still exist, everybody needs to apply for their homestead exemption. As soon as they buy their house, start that process. And most of the realtors today are very good about making sure people know how to do that. But you don't want to miss an opportunity like that as well.
Well, closing the 25 minutes that we were supposed to, we went 15
long.
But I want to say that I appreciate you coming here, giving us all the information. Again, as an investor, as a home owner, as a resident of Weston, I appreciate your job. I know that it's not easy to deal with the public, but yet you do it with such a gentleman touch that it's impressive. I commend you and I admire your patience. But at the end, I'm glad because you take care of my money. My house, my other properties that I own in Weston, I know that they're in good hands with the city government, with the city employees, and obviously with Peggy and all the other commissioners. So any last advice? The camera's all yours to give Weston residents your last words and let them know what you want to say to them.
I appreciate it. Well, first of all, it's my money too. I own a house in Weston, so what's good for you is also good for me. I've said before that being part of a community is a two-way street. We can provide and we can give and we can write regulations and so forth, but we need the community feedback. I think I mentioned to you before, we often have city commission meetings where nobody shows up. We've passed many budgets over the years, hundreds of millions of dollars of budgets, and not had anybody from the community come to respond. Now, after we pass that budget, and then if you come back, 3 months later and say, hey, man, you're not spending my money well, engage in the process. Be part of that process. Come to the commission meetings, talk to your elected officials, send us emails. We have an open door policy. You're always welcome to come by City Hall. The opportunity to make your community better doesn't just rest with the people who work for the community. It rests with the community itself. So if you want your community to be better, you've got to get engaged, and we encourage it. I think there's this perception that we don't want to engage with the public. It's completely the opposite. We offer many opportunities for people to engage in the public, and it's hard to get people to do that. We're all busy. We all have families. We all have other things we need to do. But living in a community, just like living in a neighborhood and getting engaged with your HOA, you got to be part of the process. Somebody once said, decisions are made by people who show up. Show up.
With that said, next city commissioner or city meeting, it's next Monday at 7, right?
Yeah, Monday evening at 7 o'clock.
Monday evening at 7 o'clock.
And you can watch it on the TV or
you can
streaming
come in
online or come to City Hall.
Or you can come in and like Don said, we gotta get involved. Remember, local government are the ones that impact us the most, right? It's not if you vote for president, obviously that involves a lot of decision too. But local government is what actually makes a direct impact on us as a resident. So
if you call Peggy or me, we're going to answer the phone. If you call the president president, the governor, you're
Nobody's-
probably not going to get them on the phone.
Exactly. So, like he said, get involved. You can see how close to the community the officials and the employees of the city are, and so we can break that bad idea of that. Oh, they think that they're on top of everyone. No, they live. They're also residents of the city,
Absolutely.
so they're reachable. They're very good people, and I encourage you guys to go knock on their doors and ask questions, explain your concerns, and they'll most likely address them. And if you want, hopefully I'll see you on Monday at the city meeting. I invite you guys. We can be there together, and we can hear the meeting, and we can hear what's going on and how they're spending our money. So with that said, thank you very much, and I hope you guys like this episode. And like always, seguimos. ¿Por qué se vas? All right.
Which neighborhood do you live?
I live in Weston Hills.
Oh, Weston Hills?
Yeah.
All right.
I
Well,
live. We
so
live
that-
a few